Microphone check 212. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to It's the Bearded Man Podcast with your favorite, the world's favorite bearded man, Bobby. Today, we're sitting in Zack Kravits' brand new studio, cooking up in Culver City. Welcome back to the podcast, Zack.
Thank you, bro.
This is your first time. This is your first time on It's the Bearded Man Podcast, but we've cooked up a couple podcasts in the past on Purpose in the Youth. So, it feels good to have you back.
This is our third podcast. We're gonna have a fourth, maybe after this.
Yeah,
potentially.
We'll see what happens.
Doing a double, potentially.
A little back to back from Ramblin Radio.
A little bit, yeah. It's good to be in the new studio. We're breaking it in.
Yeah, it feels good, man. I mean, I love the vibe of it. I love the aesthetic, the coloring. Mm-hmm. I love where the direction of this is, where it's going to go, and I feel kind of lucky to be in here to break it in with this podcast, with everything I'm trying to start up again. And I'm excited to be here today, man.
Yeah, this is fun. So let me ask you something first.
Let's get this thing going, baby.
I don't know if I asked you this yet, but what's the difference between Purpose in the Youth and It's the Bearded Man?
So that's a great question.
Yeah.
Look at Zach's already diving into questions. I'm supposed to be
this is my podcast now.
What happened to this?
What's up now, brother?
Freaking override mode.
Yeah.
So that's a great question. Not to make a long story short, Purpose in the Youth was me. It was a journey of me trying to figure out what I wanted to do post-college. It was a journey of me trying to find my voice in like this creative content world. It was the platform that allowed me to build an incredible network of amazing people from Boston to LA. It was really a journey of me trying to find my purpose. Mm-hmm. And when we had talked on the last podcast we did for your show back in February, that it was right when I started up It's the Bearded Man, and this whole new direction was kind of like I figured out my voice in the world. Purpose in the Youth was so much about just testing and trying these ideas, and now I want to double down on me, like my brand of It's the Bearded Man, everything that I've learned, all the people that I've been very fortunate to meet. And so this next chapter is going to be more about just really genuine, authentic conversations. And not to say that Purpose in the Youth didn't have those already, but this is much more less structured, go with the flow. I'm going to prepare and have topics to talk about if the conversation dries out. Mm-hmm. But I very much wanted to create a podcast where there is no structure. I'm not telling the world like every Wednesday you're getting a brand new podcast by me, which is what I did with Purpose in the Youth. I'm not telling you that the podcast is going to touch on people's childhood and high school years and college years and how they got to where they are. This is just like, I just want to create. I don't want to overthink. And I just want to have present conversations with people and not be so worried about what are we talking about? Like, what's the next thing? Like, we were literally just talking about before this podcast started. Yeah. So to me, the biggest thing is Purpose in the Youth was about me figuring out who am I in this content world? What is my passions? Where do I want to go? This next chapter, which I'm so thrilled and excited about, is doubling down on me and the people I've met and just trusting that this next chapter is going to take me somewhere where I need to be. So
yeah. Well, I don't think there are any rules when it comes to podcasts. You know, there are people that create podcasts for just educational purposes. They run through maybe 20, 30 episodes and it becomes almost like a product and then they move on. Yeah. There's so many different ways to do podcasting. And I like conversational stuff, and I don't think there's a right way or a wrong way when it comes to podcasts. I think it's whatever it is that you want and what feels good. But I think there are times where you feel a little bit of that pressure to give value, and it almost becomes kind of like force, and there's almost too much structure. And I think when it's more conversational and natural, and it's just a couple people hanging out and having a conversation, that's where those golden nuggets tend to pop up more, because it's just more chill and relaxed. Like, right now it's Saturday afternoon. I'm going commando right now. I'm not even wearing underwear.
Yeah, that's why I'm not doing visuals anymore, ladies and gentlemen. So the guests can wear whatever they want. Zach's just completely nude right now.
Completely nude.
Showing in his new apartment.
Yeah, that's why my legs are crossed now.
What type of rug do we have underneath our feet right here?
Oh, this is it's a cowhide rug, but it's fake. It's not real.
Oh yeah, it's probably real, dude. You probably got this shipped in from some country or something.
Yeah, no, it's fake. It's fake. I promise. I don't hunt and kill and all those things.
Yeah.
Like Joe Rogan does. But,
he's a savage.
He's a savage.
He's a goat.
Yeah.
I definitely agree with you though. The whole aspect of like, that's the best thing about podcasting is like, there is no wrong or right way. And that's what I always tell people too, is if there was one advice I could give to myself when I was getting into the podcast game in 2016, it was, there is no wrong or right way. You can literally create these into whatever you want it to be. I mean, you have the Joe Rogans who get $100 million deal from Spotify where it's like, he doesn't even know what he's talking about going into the podcast.
Yeah.
And then you have some of these really highly, incredibly produced shows like How I Built This by NPR, which is like diving into founders of successful stories. Then you have true crime podcasts, which really, I think, were the leading pathway into the podcast world. You have people like Lewis Howes with like the very buttoned up, structured, diving into specific topics. There's just so many different styles of podcasting, and I think that's the beauty of it. You kind of go wherever you want to go and just enjoy it.
And it's still new. It's still a new platform. This number has changed, but I think the last time I checked, there was like 750,000 podcasts, and I think at the end, I don't know where I saw the statistic, but the end of 2021 or end of 2020, I can't remember, so don't quote me on it. It's projected to be like $105 billion industry or something along those lines. Like the growth has just been insane, and especially during this time, during COVID, I've been trying to set up my studio here and get some new equipment. Everything is sold out. I don't know if you've noticed that.
I was just going to go off of that.
And I'm like, oh, we're about to hit a growth spurt. I mean, there's, it's a very easy way to tell if like an industry is blowing up just by trying to purchase some items,
Definitely. I mean, I would love to know the statistics of how many people started a podcast during the last couple of months, because you're forced to be alone. And then everyone went over to this transition of video conferences. And so people that maybe didn't even want to start a podcast were investing in mics, because now they had to do everything through visual Zoom calls. And so you want to have high quality interviews or whatever. So I think there's definitely an increase in podcasts probably we're going to see in the next coming months, just because people have the downtime, and these are one of the very few creative platforms that you can still get away with through the internet. And I don't know. I'll be curious to see how many more people start launching them in the coming months.
Yeah. It's a very freeing feeling to start a podcast, because there's no filter. It's very organic and raw. And with other platforms, you only have a certain amount of time to keep people's attention. And so I think that's why a lot of people are getting into this, because they do have things they want to talk about. That's why I got into it in the first place. I didn't have any like business, ventures in mind when I started it. I just wanted a platform to speak my mind and my messages. I was talking to my buddy Chase, and I told him, he's a big podcaster. I was talking about him before we started here. He's got the Ever Forward Radio podcast. He's been doing it for a long time, and he's been helping me out before I started the podcast, and just giving me ideas. And originally I wanted to just talk shit about people and just go off on people and have I had no vision whatsoever. And then it molded into something completely different. And now I'm more intentional about it, but it's very freeing in the beginning to just spill whatever it is that you want.
What would you say as of right now? And I'm sure it's changed since when you initially started. What is the vision for Ramblin Radio?
That's a great question that I haven't quite answered myself. I've been kind of going with the flow. But I love to have conversations with people that are doing bigger and better things than me. And as you know, podcasting is the biggest networking tool you can possibly have. It's completely changed your life. It's changed my life. I wanted to get better at speaking and actually having coherent thoughts and getting better at just bringing sentences together. And it used to be like a huge insecurity of mine, and it still is. I get choked up and say stupid shit, and I just wanted to get better at speaking and getting my message across. So at the moment, I don't really have like a super long-term vision. I just want to continue to impact people, keep doing what I'm doing, because the reviews that I've been getting on my podcast have just been completely blowing my mind. I did not expect to really hear some of the things that these people are saying about my podcast, and so that's just been giving me more motivation to just continue down the path and go with it. And I don't know, I think sometimes that those are the best types of content when you don't really plan for something. It just kind of happens organically because you're having fun and you're experimenting. And, you know, I was listening to Joe Rogan and hearing a little bit about his backstory. And I think he started his podcast 10 years ago. And he didn't know what the fuck he was doing. He just wanted to have some cool conversations with cool people. And then, I don't know, don't quote me on this, but I think just 5 years ago, he started getting his first sponsor and like taking it, you know, to that next level and whatnot. So I don't know. You hear that a lot these days where people start things just for the fun of it, to experiment, to test. And then it turns into something just really big and beautiful.
Well, I think the question you have to ask yourselves that I tend to do, or I've posed this to other people, is this still something you would do even if you didn't get paid for the rest of your life to do it? And I think that's a great question to ask yourself, because if the answer is no, I wouldn't do this if I couldn't get paid to do it, then you're probably not going to get to that point. That's going to, all those leaps and all those years of hard work it's going to take you to get there, you're going to be fucking miserable trying to just monetize, and it's never going to happen because you're not authentically doing it for the right reasons. You're not willing to put in the extra work. I think he was able to do it because obviously it seems that he got into the space way ahead of a lot of people. He kept his head down, kept doing it because he enjoyed it. I'm sure there was little benefits along the way that were coming along with it, but he never would have he wasn't told on day one, yo, do this for 10 years, you're going to get $100 million from Spotify.
Yeah, right.
He did it because he authentically wanted to build it. And I think that's a great question that we can ask ourselves when starting something or in the pursuit of something. It's like, would I still keep doing this even if I didn't make money doing it for the rest of my life? And if it's yes, you probably should keep doing it. And if it's no, then I'm not saying you have to give up or not do it, but are you intentionally doing it for the right reasons? Are you starting a podcast now because you go, Joe Rogan just got 100 million, like maybe I can get 100 million, you know?
Right.
So I think that's a question that sometimes we have to ask ourselves. But what's really what I really respect about you is that, and I'm going to guess that maybe if somebody hasn't listened to this, then maybe you don't know who Zack is, but you come from a filmmaker background, you come from a photographer background, you come from a creative coach background, and then obviously now podcasting seems to be like a big area you're going to be putting a lot more energy into. First off, I love how you're an example of somebody that you're doing a lot of different things. We talked about it before, the essentialist mindset of less but better, how important or how good it can be sometimes to just go all in on one thing, which I think is a good way to live your life. But I also think there's nothing wrong with, if you have multiple interests, to try and see and do those multiple things, which I also think you've done in the past, where it's like you went heavy probably with video, then the creative coach, you went heavy. Now podcasting seems to be heavy. Kind of like how, now where you're at today, how do you equally spread that energy to make sure that everything's in balance? I know video seems to be a lot less probably than it used to be. Creative coach can be, obviously seems to be a heavy part of your life now. Podcasting is going to be heavier, but how do you make sure to keep that all within balance and all within check?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's not easy. You know, you can't do all these things by yourself. And that's probably the thing that, the most important thing that I've learned is, you know, back when I started, you know, I had that lone wolf mentality of like, I'm going to do it my way. You know, this is my product. This is my video. Like, you know, I don't want anybody to have anything to do with it. And what happens is you end up becoming stuck because there's just too many things to do to get to that level of growth in order to make this like a full-time job or whatever. And so you have to put yourself in that zone of genius where you want to be. And that could be as, you know, the creative visionary. If you're creative or someone and you're trying to create amazing content for a brand or a product, you know, you want to be that visionary, that artistic visionary of, you know, knowing what the story is, but then you don't end up doing the physical labor of it. You don't end up filming. You don't end up taking the photos. You delegate that stuff. And I think you have to start thinking in that mindset, start thinking about having a team in order to keep growing and putting that vision in place. You just can't do it by yourself. And so I was spreading myself so thin with all of these different things. And then finally, when I started to learn to become the version of myself as if I've already made it. What does that person look like? Well, that person's got a team. So how can I get a team? And how can I, even if I think I can't quite afford it just yet, how can I connect with people that maybe have a skill that I don't have, but, I have a skill that they don't have, and we can collaborate in that sense. If you are really tight on money or whatever, there's just different ways to get help. You have to have people in your circle, on your team, that support your vision, or you're just going to stay stuck in the hamster wheel doing everything all at the same time.
Yeah. I think that's a great way to look at it, is there's always somebody else out there that's somewhere similar in the path that you're at, doing the thing that you need help in, and that you can equally learn and build off each other. Like I don't even think he may never hear this podcast, but Kirk Cedric, the video guy that I met out in Burbank, I met him on set within the first 2 months of moving to California, and how crucial he was to the building blocks of my career, because he became the expertise of everything production-wise of video content for me. And so he was at a stage in his career where he didn't have anything inbound. He was still trying to build his name and build his brand. And so we met, and I was like, yo, I'm building this podcast. I would love to shoot some content if you're interested. And we built a brand together. Like, he built a network through the people that I was meeting. He was able to provide like the BTS content of everything I was shooting. And so I think like how much different I'm not saying I wouldn't be where I am today, but how much value he was able to provide me being able to shoot the content. But then I hope I was able to provide him the value because of all the people that I was lining up for us to meet. And so immediately I would meet people in our driveway, and he'd be like, hey, it's nice to meet you, whoever. And I always made sure like, oh, this is my video guy, Kirk. And I would always make sure like to make sure he's known and he's part of the team. And, but it was so critical to recognize I'm not a video person. I need this as soon as possible. This is a guy who has the talent. How do I make this a level playing field where it's like, yes, he's providing me a service and I can't pay him, but what's the value that I can kind of give to him? Yeah.
You were the perfect example of that. And I remember going over to your house and witnessing that, because you were still driving Uber. Yeah. You hadn't quite made it a full-time career at that point, and yet you were still outsourcing, delegating, and putting yourself in that zone of genius without, all the money in the world and, the fat paycheck, whatever. And I saw that. I'm like, I'm not even doing that. What, I was just, taking notes, and I'm like, wow, this is how you brought those people together was really inspirational for me. Yeah. So yeah, you just
got to make it work, baby.
You made it work. Yeah.
And what's interesting, we're talking about building a team right now. We won't go into the details, but before we hopped into this, you had a nice little phone call with your boy out in Egypt, I think, just getting business done. So my man's got his team throughout the country at this point, or throughout the world, not country.
I don't know.
He's got people in other parts of the world, other globe right now.
Yeah.
But what I love is this new iconic piece you just got from our boy Mark Brazil, and on top, unfortunately, visually people won't be able to see it, but it says boss, and you have 5 guys pulling on a rope, and it looks like a guy behind them who's like the emperor, and he's up on a throne type thing, and he's being pulled. You'll see the pic if you are listening. Go on to my Instagram at this point. You should see a picture of me and Zach that I'll take in the post production. And then below it, you have another. It says leader, but you have the same 4 guys or 5 guys, but now you have the guy that was on the throne actually in front of the pack pulling. So how are you trying to incorporate this type of mindset into the team that you want to build moving forward?
That's a great question. So, when you start to hire and start building your team, and I'm just learning this now, this is still all new to me, new playing field. First thing is you're going to attract, if you're an A captain or whatever, you're going to attract A type people. If you're a B person, you're going to attract B people. If you're a C or an F person, you're going to attract a C or an F person. So you're really going to attract the right people, or the type of energy that you're giving out to them. Those are the people that you're going to attract. And so I think a lot of people initially when they're hiring, they're like, well, this person sucks. Well, maybe you suck. You ever think about that? And so that was really interesting and a big kind of a growth period for me. there. And then the second thing is, no matter how amazing you are, you're going to take 2 steps backwards when you get someone. It's always going to be a couple steps back in order to take a massive leap forward, because they have to learn. They have to learn your business. They have to learn things about their role. You have to provide that role for them. You have to coach them. So if you're a coach like I am for your members, your clients, your customers, whatever, you have to do that with your team as well. And so this is just kind of a nice reminder for me to be patient and put in that time, because that's what you're going to get out of the people that are with you. And it's the same thing with the amount of money you pay. If you're cheap with them, you think you're really going to get quality work. So I'm always trying to find ways to give more, because then I know I'm going to receive more.
Yeah, I think that's the tough mindset that it takes. Is in the short term, it might seem like you're, I don't want to say wasting your time, but you're thinking it's going to take me so much time to train this person and show them the process that I want things done.
Yeah.
But forward thinking, once this person's operating of where it needs to be and they understand the process, how much more mind space that's going to clear for me, and how much more time I'm going to be able to deliver moving forward. Which I even saw you post on your Instagram maybe like 2 weeks ago, and you were showing behind the scenes of like, you were mapping out the process of how you want every single thing done that you can then pass to somebody on your team. So instead of you having to hop on a call or trying to like explain the process, watch this video that I've already put the time and effort in creating. And if you have any specifics, then hit me up. So now you're already like, there's a lot of back end work, I'm sure, organizing and thinking through that process, but to take the time and get those details down is only going to just set up success for you and the team.
Well, why are you hiring someone in the first place? You're hiring them to get your time back. So if you have to always coach the next person, well, now you're spending more and more time. So how can you find areas in hiring and going about your whole day, not just hiring, but going about your whole day, where you're leaking time and having to coach someone and tell them exactly what to do every single time you bring a person on? You're just wasting time. So how can you create a system or a process for that to just keep cutting that back? And obviously they're going to have questions. They're going to ask, because you have unique situations and whatnot. But I mean, just showing the basics of what you need is going to save you hours and hours and hours of time. You got to get your hands dirty. You got to do it at the end of the day. You know what I mean?
Totally.
You got to get in there, because you got to get in there.
I think one thing that I'm really starting to really appreciate, I think in general, this is such a weird statement from most successful people, is their appreciation for time, in the sense of like, I made sure to hit you up and I was like, yo, you want me to send a calendar invite for this today, just to make sure it's on the cal. We knew ahead of time, we're aligned, we know when I'm coming, what time I'm leaving, and just in general. Now, is that necessary? We know each other, we're homies, it's a Saturday. It's not necessary, but I feel so much more at ease when I see like, I've grown to appreciate the Google Cal so much, not because I'm Mr. Organized all the time, but I just like knowing that this is where I'm going to be, and I know ahead of time, so that if anybody hits me up, yo, what are you doing Saturday afternoon? Do you have any plans? Yes, I do. I'm going to be doing this podcast, and I knew this a couple days in advance, but I think I just, even coming before I got here today and was getting my stuff ready, I just am so much, I'm always processing time. Even the 2 hours leading up to this podcast, I'm like, what could I do within this 2 hours to be productive before I get here? And then I was like, wait a second, it's Saturday, just go watch some Netflix. Like
chill.
You had a long week. Like you're about to have a productive afternoon. Like just chill. But just that appreciation for time and how valuable it is. And it's so hard to put a price on, because once it's gone, it's gone. You can always make more money. You can always find ways to hustle and put more money into your bank account. But that time is just something that it passes by slowly or quickly. And once it's gone, that's it. You know?
Yeah. Time's the most valuable thing. It's limited, right? I mean, that's why. So when people ask you to, can I buy you a coffee and pick your brain? Oh, first of all, just think about.
I'm so happy you're hitting this, because this is the new newsletter I got coming out this Monday.
Good. I mean, just think about, and I know there's people that are listening to this because they know they asked me that question recently. That's kind of why I popped up. So don't feel bad if you're listening to this, but still, just read the sentence, pick my brain. Does that sound like a positive thing to pick at someone's brain? It sounds horrible, right? And then with the whole coffee thing, coffee in LA is damn pricey. I'll give you that. But, maybe $6. But what's the value exchange here? $6 versus the 10,000 hours I've put into my craft to get the knowledge that I have to then give. You're basically paying me $6 for my time that I've spent just going through shit and just nastiness and clawing my way to where I've gotten not all the time, but you know what I mean. And so that always just that always just really triggers me.
Yeah. I'm so happy you said that, because literally the newsletter I have coming out on Monday is called "It's More Than a Cup of Coffee," because I saw somebody go on a Twitter rant a couple of days ago, and she was talking about how somebody's been reaching out, and it's about, can I buy you a cup of coffee? And I get it. When I was 20, I was definitely in the mindset of like, the best way to network is like offer to buy somebody a cup of coffee. I didn't know. Yeah. So I try to always remember that, keep that perspective in mind, that like it's not that they're like trying to, some people just don't know better, and they haven't learned it, and they haven't had the light switch flick off, like, oh, it actually doesn't make sense to ask for a cup of coffee. But I think the thing is like, people think it's just a cup of coffee, where you have to understand people have to drive to that coffee shop. They have to find places to park their car. They then have to find and meet you probably for the first time. Then they have to decide what cup of coffee they want. Then they have to drink the cup of coffee. They have to have the conversation with you. They have to then drive back to where they were, and they have to pick up where they left off. At least minimum hour, probably more if it's somewhere like LA, good hour and a half.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's like, so is that $6 cup of coffee worth an hour and a half of my time? Absolutely not.
No.
And it's about, you have to, I think that you can do so much more legwork behind the scenes before asking for that cup of coffee. Don't just immediately like, hey, I had somebody recently, credit to this person, they wanted to hop on Fortnite and ask me questions, and they said they were gonna Uber Eats me food, which I love the gesture. I love that he attacked it from a different angle, because he knows like, if he plays Fortnite with me, we're gonna be having fun. Yeah. But also like, I'm gonna slide in some questions. Yeah. So I respected the creativity, but I said, yo, bro, honestly, I haven't turned on my Xbox in like 6 to 8 weeks. Like someday down the line we'll connect. I just think there's so much more work that can be done behind the scenes before you ask for that cup of coffee. Yeah. There's so much more things you can do to initiate that cup of coffee, so that when the time is right, there's been communication, and then it's like, oh, are you actually free next Wednesday? Like, we should grab a cup of coffee. Like, now there's more of a relationship that's been established, instead more of value. Just sending the Hail Mary and going, can I buy that cup of coffee for you? And it just, it's tough. It's a big commitment.
Yeah. You nailed it on the head. Even more so, like free work, offering someone free work. Like when I was working with a lot of clients, I had people ask me if they could shadow my shoot, you know, and that takes so much time out of that entire shoot. Like, I have to meet them, I have to talk to them, like I have to essentially tell them what to do. All of that time and energy is getting taken away from the shoot now. So it's you have to think about the before, the after, the in between. And I think the best, even it's funny, I was listening to a Ryan Holiday, Ryan Holiday,
love his books.
He's the man. Yeah. He was talking about even saying no to people takes energy.
Definitely.
Someone asking, hey, can I provide free work, or can I do this? Can I do that? Having to read it all and then respond. That even takes energy. So he said, he's like, I just ignore it now. I just don't respond. Yeah.
I mean, at some point when somebody like him, who's probably getting inbounded 1,000 questions, it's literally, there is no time to take the time to say no. And if you do take the time to say no, no matter the way you communicate it, most people are going to be like, oh, this guy's a dick. Like, he can't give me 30 minutes of his time, or, blah, blah, blah.
Times 30,000 people.
Yeah. At that point, you just have to go, he's not going to respond. Like, I get it. Like, I totally get it.
You have to go above and beyond and do something out of the box, out of the ordinary, and provide a solution on a silver platter where whatever they're currently working on that's going to help them at this moment, not 6 months down the road or, what they were working on beforehand. It has to help them now.
Yeah.
And just doing a little bit of research, following them along, engaging, just seeing what they're up to, and then providing that, you're going to get a lot more yeses that way.
I think we talked about that in that moment, or a very similar topic on the first podcast we did, where somebody might have reached out to you and said, like, can I come watch you on this set or whatever. Yeah. And I just remember, like, if I was in their shoes and I was a filmmaker, I would say, hey, Zach, let me come shoot BTS of you, provide you the value of a piece of content that you can use on your platforms. That's going to get me my foot in the door. That's going to get me to, like, meet you. And I'm actually going to be able to study and understand why you're doing what you're doing and how you're doing it, because I'm documenting the entire process and you're getting something in return. So it's like a win-win.
And I don't have to guide or say, I don't even have to come. I mean, I'm a nice guy, so I'm not going to do that. But
you're from the Midwest, dude. Great.
Exactly.
Every person from the Midwest, great people.
Standard. But I don't have to. That's the point. Yeah. So that would be definitely a much more of a yes. Yeah, absolutely.
I know we kicked off this podcast immediately and just went into a nice little moment appreciating this studio. Yeah. But there's something else I wanted to really take a moment to acknowledge and to talk about is you are where you are today. 2020, you have this beautiful 3-bedroom apartment in Culver. This is state of the art. It's absolutely gorgeous. Your dog is the cutest. But it wasn't too long ago, and you talked about this on a recent podcast. I don't remember the title of it. But it wasn't too long ago, you really started your whole content career out of your parents' basement. And then from there, you got your own apartment in Chicago, or at least in Chicago area. And then you moved out to LA and you had the 1-bedroom and the 1-bedroom apartment. And now you've gotten to the 3-bedroom. So it's been a work in progress to getting you to where you are today. And anybody that just jumps in and sees where Zach is today, they don't really know the story of how he got here. But is there a certain trait about yourself that you would say has helped you develop and get you to this point?
Yeah, I think going for it, I think we might've talked about this on the last podcast. I'm not sure, but, there needs to come a point where you take a risk and you don't check off all the boxes. I think this is the video that you're potentially talking about. I decided to not check off all the boxes. A lot of creatives or people that are moving out want to have a certain amount of rent saved up. They want to have a certain amount of jobs lined up, whatever, so that they feel more secure when they make that move. And I'm not saying I just decided to get an apartment with zero rent or zero income and I'm in debt and all that stuff. But I did decide to get something that was going to force me to create more revenue for myself. And I made this YouTube video, and there were people that were like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. If you don't pay your rent, you're going to get on, that list or whatever, debt collector list or whatever. You're not going to be able to get a loan, blah, 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 blah. And there's just this ongoing thing. And I'm like, first of all, that person, I can tell you right now, they're not an entrepreneur. They probably have a secure 9-to-5 job, and they don't think in that way. You have to. I was talking about it with a friend of mine who's just uber successful. You have to break the rules, and you have to think outside the box and do things that people just aren't willing to do. That just seems crazy to them. And I got to be honest, being naive to some of these possible problems that could come up with not paying your rent and things like that, which I was, is kind of a blessing. Having just a little bit of being naive really, really helps, because it gives you that added boost of confidence. Like, oh yeah, I got no problem. Even in my buddy Nick Bear, who's got this insane, Nick. Yeah,
I'm a big fan of him. Yeah. Quarantine brought me a lot of blessings. One of them is finding Nick Blair on YouTube.
Yeah, he's a savage. But he and I were talking, and I was asking him about his early stages, and his start was getting just a $20,000 loan from a bank, not knowing how he was going to pay it off or whatever. He was just like, yeah, I'll just figure it out, whatever. That's
Wow.
that's kind of the mindset that you have to have almost when trying to do something unconventional like this.
Wow.
Yeah.
And now he's got the whole brand new like factory set up like for all of his supplements and just
Yeah, and he's hitting milestones. He just did 7 figures in a day not too recently. Like,
wow.
just you have to figure this shit out and just get your hands dirty. Having people in your circle is huge that have already been there and done that. That's key because you can ride the shoulders of giants and get, along a lot faster. Sometimes you have to invest in those circles, which I've done as well, which is really helpful. Sometimes you can provide value and get inside those circles and they become friends, et cetera, et cetera. But there's also a downside to that too. And this is something that I'm dealing with because these people that are giants compared to me, I only see their business now. I didn't see it before when they were getting their hands dirty and just having to figure this shit out. And if you start to play that comparison game with those types of brands and businesses that are already just like soaring and scaling, you can get really down on yourself. And this is kind of the stuff that I was having to deal with as a business owner because I'm still in that massive growth stage and building a team that really believes in the message and trying not to compare myself to a brand that's already gotten past that point, is at a totally different level. They have their unicorns and the people that are just unbelievable on their team already. I might not have that just yet. And so playing that comparison game it can be tough. So there's a good and bad by having those people in your circle. You gotta be careful.
But I would bet it's more good than bad because you're able to see that it is possible.
Yes.
I think people get put such a bad rap. I really don't. I understand why this was the thing. This is the thing of why would you want to live in LA? Isn't it like all the dreamers? It's like, yes. Why would you want to live anywhere that doesn't have people trying to push themselves and do the things that seem impossible? I think that's been one of the biggest upsides to living in LA is that all the incredible people I met are just go-getters. And one thing that I personally have tried to really figure out over the last couple months, and this was something I think we might have talked about when you came through our spot a couple months ago for the first time at the new content crib, is trying to build a genuine community where it's not always just about work.
Yeah.
And what I've recognized is that is hard to do in a city like this because people are always working. People are always doing something. There's always the next thing they need to work on. We're here on a Saturday. It's 2:36. We're cooking up a beautiful podcast. There's no other place I'd rather be on this Saturday. But I have to recognize that that is what you're signing up for when you're trying to build and do something. The unorthodox lifestyle is everybody's schedule is different. Everybody's goals are different. And so it is incredibly hard sometimes that I've, in the last couple of months, have reached out to a lot of people that I've met through podcasting and timing just isn't right. They're working on this day. I'm busy on this day. They're leaving town. They have a birthday. There's all these things that come up and it can be almost frustrating because you're just like, I just want to I'm not trying to do anything business. I just want to kick it. I just want to go to the beach with you and just get on a human level with you, not just business. I just want to get to know you as a person, So I laugh at myself when I think of it like that because at the end of the day, yes, I might struggle to find and build a genuine, not a genuine community, but people that I can see more often than when it's just business. But that is what you kind of sign up for when you're trying to associate yourself with people that are extremely successful. And it's such a blessing because these people inspire the shit out of me. They might be doing things that I'm not necessarily trying to do, but to see them succeed from afar and to see the growth, it's just it's a reminder for me that if they're able to execute on these visions, I can execute on my vision, whether it's completely right field and different from them. It's the same concept of this is where I'm at. This is where I want to go. What are the steps of getting there? How do I reverse engineer that and then get to it? But ultimately, if I was not able, and I'm sure you can attest to this too, if I was not surrounded by these people, which sometimes can fall for the comparison trap, I wouldn't have the fuel because I would believe it's so impossible to do, because then all I'm seeing is in social media feed of people executing. Mm-hmm. I'm not seeing like firsthand how they're able to execute it. Mm-hmm. So I think it's like it's a good thing. It can be a bad thing, but ultimately I would never trade it, just because I think how fortunate where these people are going to be in the next 10 years. If I'm still living in LA, we are going to be the 2030 version of Selling Sunset. We're going to have houses in the hills, dude.
That's a great show.
I'll come to your $10 million crib. You come to mine. We'll be throwing parties.
Yeah.
It'll be a different lifestyle.
That's a great point. That's something that I was talking about with my members in my coaching program is doing whatever you can to get in person with someone that's absolutely crushing, not just social media, not just online, because like you said, you nailed it on the head. It just makes it like, wow, I can do this, because you meet the person, and not in a bad way, but they're like, this is just a regular dude or regular gal, you know what I mean? Yeah. And I remember meeting a mentor friend of mine, and she was showing me her PayPal, because like she has a bunch of clients and things, and the PayPal notifications were starting to come in, and she like showed me her phone, and it was just like it looked so fake, just the amount of just notifications, boom 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 boom, just like money. I'm like, is your phone broken? Like, what?
Are these the same people, or are these all
like,
separate
what
transactions?
Like, it literally looked like they won a jackpot, and she did that specifically to show me what is possible. Like, this is real. Wow. And I was just like, I want that. Yeah. So that was a cool moment.
Damn.
Yeah.
That's fire.
That's cool.
I need that to come inbound.
Yeah, it's just, oh man.
Is my PayPal hooked up? I don't know. Shit. Maybe the notifications are sent out, because I'm not getting those updates.
Yeah.
Oh man. What's a mantra that you live by? Is there any specific mantra that you kind of find yourself saying more often than not?
Like a quote?
Like a reminder to yourself, or something that you live by? Like for me personally, I'll give you an example. Mine's, you win the morning, you win the day. That's like my bread and butter. That's like a mantra I live by. Yeah. I'm all about utilizing. I'm not about the earliest person to get up wins. I'm all about prioritizing the first 2 to 3 hours of your day about yourself, whether you get up at 5 a.m., 8 a.m., 1 p.m., 5 p.m., I don't care what time you wake up. I'm all about winning your first couple hours of the day, whether it's getting your physical workout, meditating, reading, listening to podcasts, journaling. I'm all about winning your morning, and then go win the day for everything else you have handling. So that's, for me, is an example.
That's really, you're really good at that. I think setting up your morning to win it's one of the most important things. And like you said, no matter what it looks like to you, you don't have to wake up at 4:30. If you don't want to, you can wake up at whatever time, just whatever is good for you. And we can talk about more of that. But I guess a motto for me right now, something that I'm really trying to instill, is to be like Michael Jordan. And I don't know if you saw the documentary.
Of course,
I hope you did.
Brother.
And this is probably so incorrect, but like that's all the self-development you need. Just watch that documentary, and you're set to go.
From a filmmaker standpoint, tell me how great tell me how well they executed that, though.
It's probably the best sports documentary of all time.
Oh my God.
It's unbelievable. I wish I was a part of that project, but anyways. There was a line in there that Michael said. A reporter asked him, are you nervous about hitting these buzzer beaters? You get nervous before you hit this buzzer beater, and he simply said, "Why would I get nervous about a shot I haven't taken yet?"
And
I'm just like, wow. It's like seeing the Matrix. Like I'm unplugged. I see it now. Like that's literally that's the one line. That's all I need.
Yeah.
So that documentary. It's funny because Wix hasn't seen it, my girlfriend, and we were starting to watch it, I think last night. It was last night or 2 nights ago, I can't remember. It was a weekend. I like to take my weekends a little bit easier, and she started to turn it on, and because she hasn't seen it yet, and I'm like, no, don't turn it on. She's like, why? And I'm like, because I'm gonna want to go into my office and I'm gonna work all fucking night long and just go. Like that documentary makes you want to just run through a brick wall and just fucking go. Yeah, which might not be super.
I love seeing. I of course I knew who Michael Jordan was growing up, but to see that documentary, it opened my eyes to like what it really took to be him. And the fact that he had a basketball court built on Warner Brothers studio so that he could play ball in between shooting for Space Jam.
Yeah.
Just goes to show you the extra level it took to get to his to be him. And I think he got a lot of backlash because of the way he might have treated teammate players or things he might have said. And I'm so far from that. I'm much more of a optimistic, positive, where if I was to be in his shoes, I'd be coming from I think I would be more of like, you're doing great, we need to step up or whatever. But I can understand why he was the way he is. That's like how you become great. You have to be willing to go the extra mile. You have to be willing to put in the extra work. You have to be willing to say the things that nobody else wants to say.
Yeah.
He was just such a savage. He'd go play golf with Danny Ainge before they play the Celtics in like the finals or something. Just certain things like that.
Crazy
I was like,
shit.
Holy shit! How are you finding the time to go play a round of golf?
I don't know. That guy that's a different level. I don't know if you can compare that type of level in sports, because they're not doing that for their whole entire life. It's a chapter of their life. So I don't know if you can compare that to actual life, because to live like Mike on the court, like to be the basketball player of Michael Jordan and be that person in actual life with day-to-day stuff, that's just not sustainable.
Yeah.
You just can't do that. No. But I could be wrong. I don't know.
No, I agree.
I just don't think you can.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
That's a great doc, though.
Oh, yeah.
So fire.
Yeah.
You brought up Wix. Just met her for the first time. I feel like I've known her because I see her in your social media.
Internet.
Right? The internet. So it's like, it's so funny.
Yeah.
I knew coming here, I was like, I'm going to be his girlfriend for the first time, even though I feel like I know who she is because I see him in his social.
Yeah.
Talk to me about, you both came from the Midwest. You both moved out here. What have been some of the challenges? Let me give some context before I ask the question. We talked about this a lot.
I think you asked me this before.
Yes.
Okay.
But I think I definitely asked you this.
Okay.
But to give some context, I've definitely been talking about it more in podcasts, and I think and we've talked about it too, is I'm in one area in my life that I'm definitely like heavily, and I've been making a lot of progress, is like the dating life of the bearded man. That was so just not a thing for so long, and I like ran away with anybody ever asked me like, yo, I have a friend you should meet, I would just run the opposite direction because I was so scared to invest time and energy into somebody else when I was so just trying to figure out my shit. And so the last couple months, really so last 2 months, a lot of things have been like starting to pop up, and I'm not saying I'm out there looking for a girlfriend and I'm not looking for something serious, but I'm seeing what's happening by me putting in effort into some people, what's coming from it and how great it is.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, like, what have been just some of the challenges of building an honest relationship with a significant other?
Yeah. It's not easy.
Yeah.
It's not easy. And she's been with me from when I first started my entire journey. We still get into arguments. There's a myth about living happily ever after. That's complete bullshit. We're not even married yet. I mean, it's always a work. It's always going to be work. There's always going to be communication. That's probably the biggest thing that a relationship needs is communication. When I was, trying to network and travel and stuff, she wasn't with me for those things, and so there was time separated, and we had to have conversations about what I was trying to do, what she was trying to do. It always came back on communication. For me, and what we're working on right now is really having non-negotiables. Because there's no such thing as balance if you're trying to scale and grow like a business. Like, there can be balance, but in those growth stages, you have to dedicate your time to one thing at a time, and something has to fall off. Not forever, just a little bit, and then you come back to it and give that the time it needs. You're kind of playing you're hopping, you're playing hopscotch or whatever the game's called. I don't know, but you're hopping around. You're giving energy and time to the thing that needs it most, and then you go to the next thing, and you basically switch the business mindset off, right? Turn work off, and that's not an easy thing to do, to turn that mindset off, right? And then you give time to the relationship, and then once that you've given that your time, then you move back to business, and you turn the relationship mindset off. You're flipping switches and you're turning switches off, if that makes sense. But getting back to the non-negotiables, now we have certain times in the day where we're not on our phones, and we're literally just with each other and being present, and we have to do that no matter what. And we just started something before we moved, as a little popsicle stick game where every single Thursday evening, and it's been kind of tough because of COVID. We kind of had to switch those out for new ones. But every single Thursday evening, we would pick a popsicle stick, and it would have a certain activity on it, and we would have to do that no matter what. And we wouldn't be on social, we wouldn't be on our phones. We've just been in each other's space and enjoying the moment. But I mean, there's no secret sauce. It's work. It's, you got to put in the work, and you have to communicate, and that's been the biggest thing that I've learned so far.
Do you think having the Nyla, the new pup, do you think it's built maybe has it built a little bit of tension, or has it actually built some new love for it? Do you think it's something?
Fucking nightmare. No.
What kind of dog is she for context for people?
She's a Siberian Husky.
Oh, she's beautiful.
We did not pick an easy breed.
Beautiful eyes, blue eyes.
Yeah, but again, that's another thing. It's like you put in what you get out. And we've been putting a lot of time. And again, there's really no such thing as balance. In my opinion, you're just playing the hopscotch game. And so we put a lot of our attention into her. And so a lot of our little date nights and things like that kind of flew out the window. And now, because she's gotten older, now we're starting to bring that back again. Or also, how can we incorporate her into those things? And I think, if you want to find balance in life, I think incorporating things is one of the best ways you can go. And so having your own business, I have the luxury of being able to work anywhere, right?
You built it. But you put in the work to get the luxury.
Yeah,
it's not like
yeah.
You just woke up.
Right.
I just want to make sure that's established.
Yeah.
It wasn't like
I've
you just hey, I have a luxury of it was hard work and time and dedication and putting in your 10,000 hours.
Yeah, and I still have my own obstacles that I'm going through and whatnot, but now I have that luxury to work wherever I want. But if we want to go travel, I can still work and travel. We can work in the mornings and then have the whole afternoon free if we want to. How can you infuse two things together and still do both? So that's been something that we've been experimenting. I was going to say before COVID, but Nyla, our 6-month puppy, and our relationship, going to the beach, doing picnics, tying her up to a tree so she's just chilling, hanging out, having, a treat or whatever. So, you know what I mean?
You're finding ways to make it work.
Yeah, you got to make it work. But again, it's not easy. It's work. There's no such thing as, once you get this, then it's all sunshine and rainbows.
One thing I've been repeating to myself a lot recently is, like I was saying, I'm getting back into the dating game. I'm working on other areas of my life, definitely trying to get back into the content game. But there's times when I get frustrated, right? When I'm like, why isn't this happening faster? Why am I not finding the one faster? Why am I not growing content faster? Whatever area of my life. And the one thing I continuously am repeating to myself, and it kind of calms me down, is there is no progress without effort. There's times when I get so frustrated and I'm like, why am I not making progress? It's like, Bobby, you've been putting in time and energy into this area of your life for 2 months. This takes time, bro. You gotta kind of smirk at it and know that you're making it's just like anything else. You're making a little bit of strides. You're doing your best. You're learning the do's and don'ts. You're studying the game. It's part of the process. And so it's don't get frustrated when you're not making the progress you want. It takes effort. And
you got to flip on that switch.
Yes.
And you got to turn off the other switch.
Yes.
Yeah, it's part of it.
Yeah, constant work in progress. My guy Matthew Hussey, so I've been tuning
nice.
He's a G.
He's
bro.
a savage.
He's a G. He's been a very good learning person for me to soak up some content.
Yeah.
What's an area of your life you want to work on more? Is there anything specific that kind of comes to mind?
Yeah. I mean, a good example is we moved into this beautiful apartment. You know, I've got this beautiful dog, this beautiful girlfriend. Everything on paper is perfect and beautiful, and yet I have days where I'm not happy. You know, and I'm trying to find a way to be grateful for what I have and really live in that moment and really appreciate the journey of it, because I've always had the problem of looking too far ahead. I'm always looking for that next thing, you know. Oh, I've finally reached 100,000. Okay, now it's 250,000, 500. I'm always like reaching
more.
Yeah. And you miss out on the journey itself. And, you know, I kind of had a wake up call moving here thinking like, oh, once I get this apartment, then my life is going to be amazing. I'm going to wake up just, I'll, you know.
The morning routine video. That's correct. I seen the clip.
Yeah, exactly.
Does his morning zen in his bathrobe.
Yeah.
Life is great.
Yeah, and it's just not the case. So I'm really trying to slow things down, actually, and trying to enjoy the journey more. Because again, you know, my circle, I've got one of the best networks you can possibly ask for. There's no excuse not to, you know, go after what I'm going after, but I have to be careful to not compare myself to them and make sure I look back at how far I've come. And, you know, it's not easy to do that all the time. So working on stillness, working on just being super present, and appreciating just the journey, because, you know, I don't have like money stresses or anything. I don't have, you know, all of like I have it's all first world problems. You know what I mean? And now I'm like, well, if I just made $1 million, you know,
I'd be good.
I'd be set. Well, yeah, I mean, I'm learning this now because I finally reached that level where I'm like, oh, I'll be good now. But you still have problems. Your problems change. You have different problems, but you're always going to have problems no matter what level you're on. That's why, you know, certain billionaires commit suicide, you know, which is freaking insane. It's hard to kind of think about. And I've been asked the question, you know, what is the ultimate happiness to you? And my answer was always, you know, freedom. And I think my answer was freedom because I didn't quite have the freedom that I wanted just yet. But now that I've reached that level of freedom, there's always more levels of certain freedom. Now I'm learning, well, it's not just about freedom. It's about freedom, fulfillment, and then sharing it with someone that you really care about. And there's just a lot more to it. So, yeah, that's kind of what I'm continuing to improve on and get better at.
It's a work in progress.
It's always a work in progress.
Yeah, I think that happiness is it's a very hard thing to find, in that even when I was moving into the new crib for us, I was like, once I move there, I'm gonna have more space where everyone's gonna be have everything better and
roses.
And then you just recognize like it's not about things. I've learned from my true happiness, it's about experiences. It's about doing new things, and it's constantly evolving. It's constantly like shifting and changing. And even I find the days where I've found the days when all I do is work, I feel not as fulfilled as the days where I actually balance the work. And then recently getting into surfing. So the day recently, like Thursday, I worked all day. I was done. I didn't do anything for the rest of the after, like from 7 p.m. on, except just like watch Netflix and just chill, which is totally good. You got to take those days and turn off once in a while.
Yep.
But then yesterday I was done working. Went right to Manhattan Beach, surfed for like an hour, got absolutely wrecked and tossed around. But I felt so good driving home because I had the balance of the day where I worked more than I did for the play, but I still found that time to add in a little bit of play in that experience, and putting down the phone and being present. And, you know, slowly but surely, California's getting back to somewhat regular business. But I've just found it's not my fulfillment for me, and what's bringing me happiness is that it's that balance of everything. It's the balance of making sure my work's in check, making sure my relationships are in check, and dating's in check, or surfing and hobbies in general, like making sure that's in check. Yeah. But it's interesting. Just trying to find what makes you ultimately happy, because at the end of the day, this shit's all. This is a game, bro. Like we're living
it's a simulation.
A simulation game, and at some point, like this all ends for us, and I want to be able to look back and like be like, yo, I fucking did everything I wanted to do. I crossed off these bucket lists, like experiences and things wise. I'm not, I need to buy the range. I got to buy the house. Like that's cool, and we're gonna speak those things into fruition someday. But to me, it's like I want to be able to look back and go, I did all those things that I really wanted to do, and I met all those incredible people, and I traveled to those places around the globe that I never thought I would get to, and just trying to find those ultimate happiness.
And that's another thing that I'm trying to learn is like being content with what I've done, because again, everything on paper, like I've crossed off, I've done that. It's like, whoa, like you just kind of have that realization, but then also being content, and then also finding that inspiration to achieve more. You know what I mean? And playing that balance, that's hard to do, I think. So
looking back at the last 5, I mean, you figure March, so April, May, June, July, August. I mean, I would say 5 months right now we've been in this whole COVID. I think the first 3 months were heavy lockdown, and people, especially the first 2 months, people didn't know what the fuck was going on. Every time, it was definitely a weird time. I think we understand how serious this is, but things are, the world is slowly starting to get back in business, being smart and social distancing and all that. Have there been any big lessons or takeaways that you've had from this entire experience for you personally?
I mean,
aside from how crazy the world is and how, like, just personally wise.
I mean, personally, oh man. I mean, the whole world, I've learned that, man, people are really fearful. I've learned that. I've learned that I hate the word survive. Surviving is just such a negative word in my mind, and it's thrown around a lot in the corporate world, and even people that have businesses, like your business has to survive and stuff. What about thrive? How about that word? You know what I mean? And just looking at things in a positive light. I think people spend too much time, and I've done this myself. They just spend too much time on the problem and not the actual solution. And being creative about it and finding a way to thrive and not just survive. Because I feel like if you're trying to survive, you're just trying to not fucking fail, and that's a losing game. So. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really have anything more to add to that, I don't think. But
definitely been a weird time, man.
It's been strange. I'm over it. I do my part in wearing my mask and doing what people, I want people to feel safe and feel good, and I just want to play my part in society. But at the end of the day, I'm trying to live my life, and I'm fucking over it.
How have now I wasn't gonna even pose this question. I was just more curious for the personal standpoint. But how has this impacted some of your clients that you teach through coaching? Because this affects a lot of what's happening now. There's a whole nother layer of trouble that some of these clients and some of your students have to go through. So have there been certain things, or like, how have you been able to communicate that? Because I'm sure a lot of them are struggling about that next step, because now there's this huge hurdle of what's happening in the world.
Well, I think, and this just kind of gave me a light bulb for what you asked before. This whole thing was a wake-up call for people, in that there's no such thing as security, even in a 9-to-5 role, because you can lose so many people lost their 9-to-5s. There's no such thing as security. And the great thing about being an entrepreneur is that you can create it for yourself, or get as close to it as possible, and creating that security. Again, trying to thrive and not just survive. And so getting to my members, a lot of them lost clients, but these were clients that were, local businesses with brick and mortars and things like that. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's totally understandable. Keep those clients in mind, always reach out to them, be of service to them, because when business does come back and they start getting business, you're going to be at the top of their minds, because you cared so much about them being okay and things like that. But then also look at where other business were thriving. Think about what's really interesting is, I believe Blake Pinsker movement. Is that Blake Pinsker? Yeah, he was talking about this, I think, on his podcast, where e-commerce sales were up like huge numbers because everyone was spending their stimulus checks on shit from online. I know. And I'm like, oh my God. So I was telling my members, think about what e-commerce businesses or what businesses do we need, what types of products that we need on a daily basis right now in this time. A lot of that stuff's online because there's not in-person stuff. And how can you pivot to help those people and provide solutions to their problems? And there's a gym here. I don't know if you know Training Mate. Do you know Training Mate? It's like F45. It's an Australian chain. Okay. In-person gym, like a HIIT training class type of
so
thing.
It's like a class you sign up.
It's all classes. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's called Training Mate. And
Training Mate.
Mate.
Now it's making sense.
Yeah, you got it.
Yep. Took me a minute.
Yeah. Well, they did a really quick pivot and created a online membership that offered online classes instead of in person. Somebody needs to create that transition and create those videos and put those things on a platform. You need a whole new platform in order to create a membership site of that size. Who's going to be that person? That's a role right there that's really needed. So and then I just watched something about Airbnb, how
huge
they pivoted to online experiences, I believe. There was a conversation with Simon Sinek and the founder or CEO of Airbnb about how they pivoted to these online experiences. They got, big names and celebrities like Tony Hawk to offer an online experience through Airbnb and still, create revenue for themselves. So, you have to be an opportunity seeker. That's all it is. That's entrepreneurship in a nutshell. You can't. There's this one professor of my buddy had this professor, and he took an entrepreneurship class. I took an entrepreneurship class too.
I tried, but I didn't get into it, and I don't even know if I would have learned it.
I don't know if I learned anything either because I was just not thinking in that way back then.
Yeah.
But he really liked this professor, and the first thing she said was, on day one, I can't teach you entrepreneurship. I just can't do it. But I can teach you how to find opportunities. Ooh. And that was like a nice little mic drop moment for him. And that's what it's really all about, is seeking opportunity. Just like, with security, there's no such thing, but you can always create for yourself. You can create those opportunities. You can create, security, or at least as close to it as you can. You got to create it for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, you know what, to go off that, I think you don't even have to be an entrepreneur. I think to incorporate that mindset into whoever you are is so important. To not like look at it as like a victim of like, oh my God, this is happening and now this has affected my life and X, Y, and Z, and getting all digging yourself deep and losing motivation and feeling sorry for yourself and complaining. The faster you can flick that switch of going, how do I adjust? What can I do now that's gonna help me transition and make that next step? Because it's like, at the end of the day, when this was all happening, I very quickly like realized like, because I think there's really, this is not obvious. I mean, yes. There are people that really struggled during this shit.
Oh yeah,
like
absolutely.
Like financially, mentally, because they're by themselves, physically because they rely on being at a gym, and now that they can't go to the gym, they don't even know what to do in their apartment, and they don't want to use YouTube videos. There are really people that have struggled heavily through these past couple months. I feel very fortunate that this happened, and within days, I was from when they announced quarantine in LA, you cannot leave. Within days, I was already like, how do I adjust? Okay, so my gym, I can't go to the gym. Cool, I'm gonna start doing YouTube videos here. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I now have to work from home. Great. I am somebody that used to working out of a fucking bedroom studio. We're just gonna set up a little studio setup. I'll make this work. Cool. What else? Like now I'm not going outside as often. How do I get back outside more? Okay, I can go out for a run. That's gonna get me back in running. Cool. So I'll start going outside more. I'll get back in running. So I was very quick to like see the problem, evaluate what the fuck is happening, and going, okay, how do I adjust, and how am I gonna dig myself out of this hole for what I'm in? I have a job. I'm financially secure. I'm very fortunate. Yeah. All these other things checked off, but that was the mindset. And so to go off of what you were just saying, it's like you don't even have to be an entrepreneur to have that mindset. And that can be with relationships with a significant other. That can be with personal relationship with family. The faster you can transition that like victim / like the world is against you to how can I adjust to what is actually happening and just take control of wherever I'm going next.
One of the best things that I've taught myself and kind of evolved and still improving on is just taking the blame for everything. 100%. I blame myself for fucking everything. I don't know if we talked about this in the last pod. I think we did, but people are so quick, creatives, just giving a creative example, trying to find an editor to create videos for you. People are so quick to say, this edit's not good. I don't want to trust my edits with people because they just don't understand. Well, you have to communicate what that is to them. You have to be able to communicate, what the edit is. And so it still comes back to you. It's your fault that they're not doing the edit right. Or maybe you've kept them on your team for too long and you should have been looking for somebody else. It always comes back to you and your fault. So it just makes things simple. Yeah. Right? When you're not pointing fingers, it just makes things fucking simple. You can just see the problem. Oh, this happened. Let's get right to finding a solution. So simple. And then there was this quote. Have you seen the movie The Martian?
Yeah.
That
with,
ending
with Matt Damon.
With Matt Damon. Yeah.
What's the ending? Oh, when he's teaching the class. Yeah. What did he say? Something specific?
He said something specific. I'm like kind of like forgetting it right now. I posted on Instagram.
Yes.
But he's fuck. It's so good though. But that statement that he said fucking changed my life. He's like something along the lines of just solving problems is what kept me alive. And it's the same thing with life and business. You keep solving problems, you're gonna grow so much and be so successful and fulfilled. Just keep solving problems. You don't have time or energy to think about or being fearful about certain things. And I like using Tiger Woods as an example. He has a rule where he's only allowed to take 5 steps to get angry, and then after that 5th step he doesn't even think about the shot anymore. So just little things like that is just using your time and energy very wisely, taking the blame for everything, and then just going in and solving the problem. So simple.
I love that Tiger Woods 5 steps, and then what's done is done.
That's
nothing you can do to go back it. The longer you hold on to it, the more it's going to just screw you up. And take 5 steps and then kind of forget about it. What I want you to pose a challenge to people that are listening to this podcast today for something that you want them to do after this podcast. It could be to benefit themselves. What's something that you would want people to do after listening to this podcast? It doesn't have to be creatively. It doesn't have to be entrepreneurially. Like, what's something that you think everybody could do after this podcast that would benefit them?
I think everybody can not put so much pressure on having to do things that people might say on social media to be successful. For example, waking up at 4:30, 5 a.m., reading a self-development book, then taking all these vitamins, then going out and doing Wim Hof method, and then going, doing the next thing and the next thing. I think those of you listening, just do the trial and error game and find a routine that really works for you, because you need to be excited about your morning. And even me, I was talking to Wix about this. I'm like, man, I don't remember the last time I was excited for my next morning. Like something's off there and I need to figure that out. And I tweaked my morning routine a little bit and just, I adjusted it and made it work for me. And, now I'm starting to like gain a little bit of that energy and a little bit of that spring out of my bed a little more. And so, I would just not put so much pressure on. There's no formula for success because there's too many outliers.
Yeah.
There's people that are working, 60 hours a week, like a Gary Vaynerchuk, okay, that's fine for you. But then there's also multi-millionaires that work 20 hours a week, and that's what works for them.
Yeah.
So I think you need to just take pressure off of yourself for finding a formula and just listen to your gut and just do what feels good.
Yeah, I love that. I completely agree. It's the trial and error. I think you have to, I have tweaked my morning rituals multiple times.
And that's okay too, is to change it.
Yeah. It's exactly what you said. When you realize, you go, I'm actually not excited for my morning. What do I need to change? What should I be like adding in or pulling out? Constantly being self-aware of like, this is not working. Like I need to take something out. I need to add something to it, but constantly just adjusting and seeing what works best for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any last words? Anything exciting you want to share that's coming up? Final thoughts?
No, I don't know. Whatever, bro. No. You guys can check out my podcast. Can I shout out my podcast?
Yeah, please. Ramblin
Radio, baby.
Ramblin Radio.
Yeah, we're gonna start having some dope guests. We're gonna do the in-person thing. This is a new thing for me, which I'm excited about, is to do this in-person thing. I know, COVID's kind of put a little bit of a crimp in that a little bit, but go check out the podcast. There's a lot of little golden nuggets in there, and don't put too much pressure on yourself. Just take it day by day, one thing at a time. Don't get shiny object syndrome.
Yep.
And just focus on what's next.
I also want to say Liquid IV is a new proud sponsor of Zack Kravits podcast.
Hell yeah,
so
baby.
Make sure you guys and gals go support him. Go to Liquid IV. Use Kravits at checkout.
Kravits.
You need to get
with
this,
an S.
With the nets.
Not
with
a Z, with an S.
Yes.
To get 25% off.
Yes.
Let's go.
We got to get my man, get that partnership rolling. But thank you for taking the time today, man. This has been great. I'm thrilled to see this new studio set up and what's to come. But this has been great to catch up, brother.
Thanks, man.
All right, we'll talk to you guys and gals soon enough.
Later.
See ya.